Welcome to Empire Building, the podcast where we talk about building big businesses and even bigger lives. I'm your co-host, Tiffany Fikes.
And I'm Wendy Papazan. And wow, do we have a special guest for you guys today. We're so excited to welcome Brianna Wiest to this episode of the Empire Building podcast. Many of you know her because she's a best-selling author. She's an empire builder in her own right. She's written some of my favorite books that I've read recently, including The Mountain Is You, The Pivot Year, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. Really just a thought leader in this category. This interview will be released in two parts. In the first part, you'll hear about Brianna's background and how she got started in writing. And in the second episode, we'll get a little bit more tactical. We'll talk about how she's built her empire, some of her writing quirks, how she really approaches the writing process, how she's approached her newfound fame, and how she's leveraging her life, both personal and professional. And we're really just going to do a deep dive in. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, this episode is packed with inspiration and wisdom, and we cannot wait for you to hear it. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Welcome, Brianna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm so excited to be in Miami, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you all.
Well, we are excited to learn a little bit more about you, have our listeners who either love you or maybe this is their first intro to you, just get to know you a little bit more so that they know what an exciting time we're going to have in Miami. So I would love to just hear a little bit of your story. Like, how did you get to where you are now?
Yes. Oh my God. Well, it's a long one.
Yeah, you're going to have to give us the abridged version.
I'll give you the condensed version. It's like layers of an onion. You know what I mean? So I'm like, let me start at the top layer and then I can work my way down. So as a writer and author, and really, I think anytime someone has a career like in like a creative field, like the question people ask all the time is, did you dream of this as a child? Did you always want to write books? Was this, your passion, your love? And to that, I have to say, no, not even a little, like absolutely not. I wanted to either be like an English teacher. Like I always knew I loved to read and write, but never to like create in this way. And certainly not to be this like vulnerable at like scale, like not even on the mind. So when I went to school, I studied English and my concentration was professional writing. And I am not kidding you. I literally did not even take the creative writing class that was like offered as part of the program because I had so much anxiety about reading in front of the class, like whatever, like, creative nonfiction I was working on. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm not even kidding you, like, who would possibly care about what I would have to say? Like, I have nothing interesting to say. So I was really, in resistance, really avoiding that. So long story short, I became a journalist, essentially. I was a news writer. I was an entertainment writer. I used to write for Teen Vogue, fun fact. Very, very fun fact. If you know the TV show Riverdale, if you go to the last episode of the first season, I'm the extra sitting next to Luke Perry in the finale.
Oh, wow.
I was on set for Teen Vogue interviewing them, and they were like, oh, do you want to be in the shots? And we were all like, okay. And so I'm sitting next to Luke Perry in those closing shots. So that's my icebreaker fun fact.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a really good one.
I don't say anything, but you can see because I nodded because I was listening to the speaker like in the scene. So that was my acting debut. The first and last and only.
Never say never.
And hey, you know what I was just about to say? You know what? I said never about this writing thing. So,
It's true.
Call me in 10 years. Who knows? Anyway, so I was doing that. But then also I wrote for like Bustle, Allure, and I started to write for Forbes when I was 25. And then all throughout that time, I was also writing truly my own creative nonfiction, my own essays, journal. And that it was just a really personal thing for me. It was a way of processing it. I was always very, very into personal growth. Like even from the time I was a teenager, like this always just really interested me. And I had such big waves up and down with my mental health. And I found that I had tried so many resources to help and nothing quite clicked the way that reading did, and reading from, certain authors that would really kind of speak to what I was going through. And I remember I think the first book I ever read, like in the genre, was like Purpose-Driven Life or something like that. If I'm remembering correctly, it's like a religious, I think, daily devotional, if I have that correct.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I'd ever read anything like that. I didn't even know this type of writing existed. I didn't even know this kind of books existed, right? I was like 15. And I remember thinking, wow, like you're really speaking to where I'm at in this moment. That's so powerful. So anyway, I took that back in the back of my mind, and I'm continuing on with my life. And I think, I'll be a journalist forever. But what's happening kind of concurrently is I start sharing what became the kind of personal essays online on Thought Catalog, which is where I was working at the time. And at the beginning, nothing really happened. Not that many people read them, and I didn't care. I was doing other things, for work, and that would be my career. But then over time, and I really attribute this to just where the collective was, people started really being interested in those kind of more personal pieces that I was writing. To make a very long story short, they ended up being put into 101 essays. That was the first book that started to get popular. And then during that time, I kind of realized that this is what I really wanted to do. And I started writing The Mountain Is You. And then by, I think, 2021, both of those books at the same time kind of hit like a global zeitgeist together. They were number one, number two in like 7 countries at once. And that was it. And then I was like, all right, like life is speaking to me and it's saying, do this. But there was this one moment that I speak about often when I was hiking sometime in college or right after. I was at Whiteface Mountain, in the Adirondacks in New York. And I was learning to meditate. And again, you have to remember, like back then, like this is not like a common, like meditation was not a common thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is like novel at the time. And I remember I was sitting by this one lake, and I remember getting this really strong gut intuitive feeling like I was meant to write. And I remember thinking to myself, like, write what? And that intuitive feeling was, just make yourself feel better and you'll make other people feel better at the same time. Like it was really kind of simple the way it came through. And I was like, all right. And then I didn't really think anything of it. But I remember moments like that where I kind of felt that. And I also think that the arrows were kind of pointing in different ways where it was like, this was like the field I kind of wanted to be in. I really always loved this stuff. But the thing that I never could have expected and that dazzles me daily is that I would be so honest and so vulnerable and basically drawing an outline of, whatever I'm struggling with or how I walked my way out of it. And for so many people who I really would have nothing in common with otherwise to resonate with it so deeply. And it's been almost like esoteric in nature in that way. You can't even imagine. Like I have people I meet who are readers who are 10 and readers who are 95. I mean, people in the military. I just sent copies of The Mountain Is You to a prison. There was a group of women that they had one book they were passing around and starting their own book club. Like you can't even imagine. And I'm floored by this like every day. But I think it speaks to something greater in the human spirit, some connective tissue. Okay, that was a really long answer.
No, that was great. And yeah, it's the human experience. Like we all think that we're having this really, really individual experience, and we are, but there's this humanness that we all share that creates that you're talking about, where we're connected in a way that we don't realize until a 10-year-old and a 95-year-old and across 7 continents all resonate with the same message at the same time, which is just such a good reminder.
I think the world is also really starved for vulnerability right now. We live in a world where everyone's highlight reel is compared to everyone else's. And just the vulnerability that you bring to your books that makes it very powerful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's like people say to me so often, it was like you wrote this just for me. How did you know? And I'm like, well, I wrote it for myself. And so, I think part of the creative process, when we're building or creating literally anything, that ultimately is for other people. I feel like one of the gifts of my life was that at the beginning, I didn't know those pieces would be a book. I didn't even know people would read them. And over the years, as I've mentored writers and worked with other writers, and when they go into it with the intention of, I'm going to write a good book, something gets lost in translation. But when I can get them to go in the way that I unintentionally did, which was I'm going to write something that is meaningful to me first and then make it universal. There's like a sincerity at the beginning and throughout. Like the end goal wasn't in my head at the time. Maybe with The Mountain Is You, but otherwise, no.
Well, you were writing it for yourself. It was a cathartic act for yourself, right? Did I hear that in your story?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, like the thing that heals us is often heals other people too. And so I love that you were doing your job. You were doing your job, being a journalist, doing that, and on the side, doing what you needed and being creative. And then that creative thing is now, been brought onto the other side, and it's the thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I always say this too, that the first litmus test is us. And that if it's not the book that changed my life first, if it's not the song you want to listen to on repeat, if it's not the service you would pay that for, like that's where you begin with yourself as the test. Because if you wouldn't do it, read it, whatever it is that you're creating, and it's not to say that if it is for you, it will be for literally everyone on earth. Probably not. But that is a really powerful place to start, I think.
And I think it speaks to the larger idea of, when you run towards your joy, when you can wake up every day and you run towards the things that you believe in and that matter to you and that bring you joy every day, that just creates a larger experience, not only for yourself, but for everyone around you,
Yeah.
If more people were waking up and doing that every day, the world would just be a much better place, I feel.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm curious, you call yourself a writer, but you've done lots of different writing, and John Grisham is a writer, and there's all kinds of different writers. When I think of who you are, I think of you more like a philosopher, wonderings and thinking. What do you really identify as? Is it just a writer, or is it something else?
I really just identify as a writer. I'm so flattered. I feel like I don't know if you can call yourself I like that you can call me that. I don't know if I can call myself it. But I've thought about this a lot too, because I've written 2 poetry books, and so poet is used semi-often. And I really have thought about this a lot. What word do I feel fits it correctly? And I always come back to writer, not even author, but writer, because I feel like even if I'm not working on the books and I'm writing other things, it just is the craft that I feel most married to and I feel most strongly about. And I want to write fiction one day. I have some ideas, So that's really kind of been like the commonality throughout, but I am flattered.
Well, you have a big life ahead of you. So
yeah, maybe you have to be 40 to be a philosopher or something like that. It's like the president.
Yeah. Or do you have to be carved in stone somewhere? That's sort of like
that too. I think you need a statue.
Yeah.
Goals. I love that.
One question I have is, you're so young. How do you have so much wisdom at such a young age? I know a lot of people and I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but in their 20s, were not able to have spent any time putting together sentences that make sense. They're, out just doing life. What is that thing you think that, was there experiences that you had growing up, or just, is that your bent to think deeply about things?
I feel like I get this question. I have a few different answers, but I'll tell you my most honest one is I don't really know. I don't really know. I think it's a combination of just the things that interest me, the things that I've cared to read about and study on my own time, just out of genuine passion and curiosity. Part of it is probably something innate, some kind of disposition somewhere along there. I think part of it is just consistency. I think part of it is a connection to something greater at times. And I just think all of it comes together, but I don't really know. I never know how to answer that because I'm really not sure.
Well, it's your gift. It's your gifting for sure.
It's your gift. And what I heard you say is that you actually listened to that little quiet voice inside of you that said you need to run in this direction, and you actually followed it, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people ignore that their whole life, or they ignore it until it's almost too late.
Yeah. I feel like women get asked if they're young and do something well. you're so young, but I feel like I have male peers who have written bestsellers at the same ages that I did, and people just like call them prodigies. They're like, oh, they're just a genius. But I feel like I get that question out, like, oh, like, look at you, like, how are you so smart? Like, I don't know.
No, it's true.
Are they writing books like you, though? Because best-selling book isn't what I see you as. It's the wisdom on the pages. It's not just your ability to put words together in a powerful way. It's the thoughts behind them.
Yeah, I mean, I would think like authors like Ryan Holiday who are writing like,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, people like that. But I also think that if I could call it like a poeticness, I don't know what the word would be. I feel like there are other authors definitely like in that genre or in that realm. But I think that I try to bring, I attempt anyway, like a soulfulness to it that I think people know that that's not just something of the brain. And that I really don't know what to attribute it to. Just, but I will say too, like I acted on it, but I meet so many people. I mean, so many young women in their 20s and even younger, like in high school, who the words resonate with them as well. So I'm like, all right, well, there's something inside you too that it clicks. And I think that universal like nature of whatever is that like connective thing in our spirit, like I don't think it has an age. I think it just is. And I've said this before too. Like I think it's like, when sometimes like words of just like pure wisdom and truth come out of the mouths of children. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're still intact connection to something bigger than themselves that hasn't been kind of conditioned out yet. And I think that's actually always in all of us. And we just have to be reminded sometimes.
Well, so I know you've experienced a huge amount of success in a relatively short amount of time. And I'm sure you've had to stretch professionally and personally as a result of that. So tell me a little bit about like what your empire looks like right now. I know you're involved with Thought Catalog. You've got your books. Is there anything else you've got going on?
I am working on my next book right now. I don't know if I can say it yet, but it's a book about purpose. That was the most consistent question that people have asked or come to me with the big concerns about it. I just think people are really like ready for it. And I'm really excited to write it because I feel like it's very fresh for me right now of taking that big leap really into what you feel is most meaningful. I would say that the biggest thing about the book right now is that purpose is not like a single act or vocation, but I kind of equate it to like a bell that rings when life is asking for volunteers. And when we think of our purpose as the people we become, and then it's the way that those people do everything that gives our lives meaning, it almost relieves us of the stress of needing to almost decode our fate from the stars and like follow the map kind of thing. And so like another part of the book too is, the idea that if you're not enthused, you're not on path, right? So it's like we think of purpose and meaning as being, stoked all of the time for what we're doing, or that it's that we have like one line of an elevator speech when we're, 70 years old, this is what I did. When I know so many people that, and I really mean this, their greatest peak purpose, the most meaningful thing was their role as a parent or a friend. And I hope that it will help people rewrite the idea of what purpose is and how to find it and how to feel really more solid within your own self and knowing that, it's not this mountaintop pinnacle thing for us to reach, but really that every single one of us has it. We just have to be able to recognize it. Other than that, I am a partner at Thought Catalog, which is the place that published my books. And I work there and I bring on new authors and I do my own thing as well. That's a really simplified way to put it, but that's the essence of it.
You said the bell that rings when the universe calls. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
The purpose is a bell that rings when life is asking for volunteers. Will someone sing that song? Will someone write that book? Will someone start that business? Will someone clean that space? Will someone care for that person? And it's really only in the moment, in the now, that you can hear the bell. And again, it's the kind of person that you are. So it's like, if the bell that's ringing is, will you care for this person? Do you do it with a begrudgingness? Do you do it with I don't have time for this. This is beneath me. Or do you do it with a humility? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what purpose really is at the end of it. You know what? I need to get up every morning and do a podcast and talk about this because I'm getting more lit up because I'm somewhere in the book writing process now where I don't know, it's peaks and valleys. And I'm somewhere in the valley of like, this is dumb. I can't do this. And you know what? Talking about this now is making me feel better.
Good. I love that. Well, there's got to be something to be said for when you're a writer to verbally process things. That's got to be, it's like a different way to like light up different parts of your brain, you know?
Okay. I need you all to call me every morning.
Done.
Wendy, we can trade off. I'll do Monday, you do Tuesday.
Hi.
It'll be great.
Morning wake up call. We've got some good, powerful questions for you. Yeah.
Well, that brings up, like the role of community and the people that you surround yourself with. And so, like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what role has community and the people in your life played in your success?
Professionally, it's been a few really close friends. By really close friends, I mean like day-to-day friends. Like if we're not seeing each other, we talk every single day, who are basically doing the same thing that I am doing, and using one another as a sounding board and working so much out. Specifically, my friend Bianca, her handle on Instagram is Rainbow Salt.
Shout out to Bianca.
You really should all follow her. She's like the best writer I've ever known. And just buy her books and just love her. She's the best. So it's been people like that. The two of us have kind of together been making this up really as we go. And we talk every day and figure out, what works, what doesn't, and come up with all kinds of stuff. But then in my personal life, it's, my close friends and family who are, not, at work, not coworkers, colleagues. I feel like the biggest and most important thing there is if I want to talk about things that are going on, I always have a sounding board and a listening ear, but I know that I always have people in my life where I close the computer and I'm just free to them. And like, that's the most helpful thing. Like, that's the most meaningful thing to me, where it's like, don't think about me the other way.
Yeah. They're not etching you in marble at home.
No. Not exactly.
Calling you philosopher.
No. And I wouldn't want them to, though. Again, flattering.
Of course.
But that you don't know how meaningful and important those people are until these like times in your life where you're like, wow, you've known me for 15 years. And when we get together, it's the same hilarious crying until 1 a.m. over wine that it was all those years ago. And like that has such an importance to my life now where I'm like, oh, I never want to lose that.
Wendy always says it takes 15 years to have a 15-year-old relationship. And as we get older, those just become so much more precious because you can not get it back. It's hard to start that over again. And so
you probably all do have relationships in your life that have survived so many different chapters, so many different moves, so many different changes, so much you grow as a person. And there are relationships that meet you kind of at each part of the person you're becoming. Those have taken on such an importance to me too, because I'm like, it would take another 2 decades to recreate this. And you value those people and those connections so much as time goes on, I feel like.
Yeah, so powerful. Yeah, one of the things we do with Her Best Life is we connect women, because I think so many women, especially when you run your own business, you're quite lonely.
Oh, yeah.
You have to put your armor on every day and look good and be right and be the leader. And it can be a pretty lonely place for a lot of leaders, but especially for women. So that's just one of the things that we do is we bring people together.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
I love that. And I think this is a great place to pause our discussion. We can't wait to continue this conversation in our next episode. Brianna will share some of her unique writing quirks, the books that have influenced her, and so much more.
Make sure to tune in on Thursday for part 2.
And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast because your support helps us reach more people like you.
Until then, keep building your big businesses and even bigger lives. Bye.
Bye.